S08E25. That's all we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me we have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty good. Look, two home wins. You know, we've broken the curse. 2 clean sheets, 2 wins in it. On the bounce. I mean, there's not too much to be unhappy with.
That's it. I'm trying to think because it's been a little while since we've had you on. I can't remember quite where we were in the league on your last episode, but certainly a lot lower than we are now. We're into the top half for the first time since probably those first few weeks of the season. And as the title of the podcast says, perhaps daring to dream.
Yeah, look, I was thinking about this a couple of days ago about like what we'd predicted for the beginning of the season. I'm fairly certain I said like, top half's the minimum. Playoffs would be, you would be great, but maybe a little bit of a fanciful thought. But sort of, I don't know. I didn't think that Rosinu, like I thought, we'd improve, but I didn't. I guess like it's just that sort of a season where it's sort of been really tight, sort of throughout. There's not been a big group of runaways, where some other seasons there sort of has been, and there's been a huge gap between 6th and 10th, for example, or whatever. But I think that the impact that he's had with what is it, like 2 losses or something in the 11 games or something,
2 and 11 or something. Yeah,
which is sensational. To have the team, we had the worst defense in the league at one point, and but we've really he's turned that around without really any it's not like he shipped out the whole defense and brought in a whole new back line or brought in any new players in those areas. He worked with what he had already, and has just got them, I don't know, I guess playing the way he wants. But it's been really nice progress, and I think it's just crazy to think as we went into the World Cup, that World Cup break in such a low position, so it was sort of devastating with the amount of investment we had at the beginning of the season, and obviously the hot start as well, sort of like had us all, daring to dream well before we should have been. Those first few rounds, the win on, the couple of wins and stuff early on, and sitting in the top, we went, oh, this season's going to be great. Sort of all
especially
fell apart.
Because I think we had all those early wins, and I think the window hadn't even closed. So we were thinking, oh, we're just going to get stronger from here, and yeah, it didn't quite work out.
But I think, just the way that we've had the World Cup break, we've come back, and it's almost like watching a completely different team. But yeah, it's really positive. I mean, I'm certainly like, I go 4 points or whatever it is to the 6. It's like I am daring to dream at this stage. But I think like there's still so much football left to play. Like it's crazy to think like how many games are still left. Because I think there's still like 15 games or something like that left. I think we're played about 29 or 30 matches or something.
Yeah, I think we played
like
30. So we've got 16 games left. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have. So we've got 16 games left. Yeah.
Which is like just there's so many points on offer. So the next couple of games, seem really big because if you get a couple of wins, then all of a sudden potentially you're in that, you're occupying 6th or 7th or something. But with another 14 games after that, it doesn't really.
And that's what I was going to say, is like the position we've put ourselves in, every game's big for a different reason, because either you're playing a side below you where you think this is a game that we should be winning and picking up another 3 points, or it's a game against the side just above you, because we've already played Sheffield United twice, and you think this is a game where if we win, all of a sudden we're kind of leapfrogging that team. Like we'll talk about the game with Norwich, which is probably the bigger of the 2 games, but that's the sort of fixture where you look at and you go, we win that, all of a sudden we're ahead of Norwich and really on the back of that top 6.
Yeah, it's a exciting sort of period. But as you say, sort of every game, different set of expectations, different set of sort of ramifications from the win. But yeah, looking forward to, I think, the next couple of games. I think there should be, I think we're sort of really building into some nice, real positive form with some defensive resilience, and getting that ability to sort of to nab a goal and nab a win. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, well, a nabble win we certainly did against Cardiff on the weekend with that 1-0 win. Unchanged lineup from that QPR win as well. And so it was good to see the side follow that up with another 3 points. Probably made it more difficult for ourselves than we needed to. I think I might have said it to, I think it was Mike on the episode last week, or maybe it was Logan, that we do tend to struggle against teams that sit back and don't really come at us. And Cardiff was certainly that style of side, where if you don't get that early goal, it can become quite a nervy game the longer it goes on at 0-0. But, there's a few call-outs, obviously, with Ingram saving that penalty in that first half, and Christie with a couple of great chances, one ending in the goal. But I thought it was another pretty solid display from everyone.
Yeah, look, I really enjoyed the game. I thought, we started really well and we were on them from the get-go. And I think the games where we have come out really strong and started really strong are the games where we've sort of performed better. But I kind of always felt like, I thought throughout the whole game, I never really thought that we weren't going to score. It's always, I thought, the way we were attacking, and even though we did struggle, for some periods to break them down, I thought, we still had enough really good chances, especially in those first like 10 or 15 minutes. It was the amount of those opportunities that were coming, and a few really good balls whipped in and stuff. I thought we were going to score, but there was a period in that game where I was going, this is going to be one of those games, and then Elder gave away the penalty where we do something stupid and they concede a goal, and then, we're playing it to get that, to get a draw back or whatever. But, Elder just got sold. He dived into block a cross that didn't come. But sensational save from Ingram.
Yeah, well, I can't remember where I said it. It might have been on Twitter or somewhere that this does exactly right. That this felt like the sort of game that would be a 1-1 draw earlier in the season, and it granted that Ingram's made a great penalty save to stop that being the case, but it also just shows that progress that we've made. That we're turning. We were sort of complaining about the 1-1s and saying, well, actually, undershot of that would have been a loss. Now we're saying, well, actually, we're turning them into 1-0 wins. So it does show that sort of tangible progress that we're making under a senior.
Yeah, I think just overall it was a really solid performance from pretty much everyone on the pitch. I can't really fault anyone. Yeah, I guess Elder for giving away a penalty, but overall, I think it's still I thought he still had a really solid game. That was one.
I was going to say, yeah, I thought he really redeemed himself second half. I thought he had a great second half after that penalty incident.
Yeah, and I think it's his ball that goes across to Christie that allows him to cut in for one of his early chances. And a couple of, I think, it's the one that he whips back across the goal. I think he puts that long one over the top. Christie beats a player and then pings it across low and hard, and then Oscar and Connolly just can't quite get the touch to tap it in. But there's a few nice runs in, down into that corner. A few nice balls in. So I thought, yeah, he sort of redeemed himself. But it's sort of, I think we're at a point now. I mean, apart from obviously that, QPR, the Connolly against QPR, but for the most part, we just having these games where everyone's performing at a really high level, and there's not really ever, we're not relying on one player to have a standout game to secure us things. It's everyone's, putting in a 7 or 8 out of 10 sort of performance and playing really well, which I think is realistically the sort of what you need out of your team if you do really actually want to be challenging up, towards the playoffs and those sorts of things. Relying on, a single player, or one or two players to be the ones that are dragging your team, forward is sort of not going to work. And there was, I think, times earlier in the season where it sort of felt like that was what we were doing. We were, relying on waiting for Oscar to score a goal to get us some points or something like that. Whereas, or, relying on Greaves to, put in another, defensive display that he does. But it seems like everyone's a lot more consistent in their performances now, which is really, really positive.
Yeah, and talking of Greaves, we did see him come back off the bench. So good to see that he's presumably pretty close, if not back to full fitness. Gives us a bit of a headache going into the Stoke game in terms of how that lineup looks. But look, as you say, it's the consistency of effort. You look at Burnley up in first, and each week you look at their goal scorers, and it's always a different sort of mix and match of their players because, as you say, you need to have that sort of spread of contributors. And you think, Oscar's obviously out the blocks in front with the number of goals he's scored, but you've got Christie, two fans scored a couple as well. Obviously Connolly last week, Slater as well. Like there's like this whole sort of goal scoring midfield as well that's contributing to help get us wins and makes us a much more dynamic side in that sense.
Yeah. I forget what I was going to say.
That's all right. Well, talking about 7s and 8s out of 10, that's a good segue into our MVP votes for the game. So I thought maybe you could kick us off for those.
Yeah, look, I wasn't sure how I was going to sort my 3 and 2 because I thought there were 2 standouts. One for winning us the game and one for essentially saving us the win. And I couldn't really decide which was the bigger moment. Because they were both, so significant, especially in a 1-0 win. Do you go the one goal that gets you the win, or did you go the big save that preserved you the 0 lead at the time? I ended up going with the big save, so I give Ingram the 3 points because I thought, and it wasn't all he had to do throughout the game, but that was a big moment, and you need, your players to stand up in big moments, and I thought he absolutely did there. And that was a moment where I worried that, we'd concede that penalty and then potentially, fall apart, throw away what had been such a promising start to the game. So I've given 3 points to Ingram. And obviously we know where the 2 points is going. They're going to Christie for another just really impressive attacking display from our right back. Just seems to beat players in the opposing box like very easily and very consistently.
His footwork is amazing. Like he did it against QPR for that Connolly assist as well. He just sort of, I don't know, he just fools them every time.
Yeah, so because I think it was interesting in the call because I watched the highlights again, and then I think the first one where Christie puts the ball just outside the top corner. The commentator said something like he doesn't get up here very often for those opportunities or something. And then I was like, I don't know about that. He seems to do it every week. But the other thing was then it was almost an identical situation that he scored.
That's right. Yeah. I loved how similar it was to that chat because it's you sort of see him and it's like he's just getting his eye in. He's done the miss. He's like, okay, I know where I've got to hit it, and then he just hits it perfectly.
Yeah. So it was. I think I gave 2 points to Christie just for another really solid display and obviously a very important goal for us. And 1 point, I struggled a little bit. I sort of tossed a few names through my head, and then apparently I've come up with the same one that you did.
Oh, right. There you go.
I swear I had made this decision before I saw the sheet. But so I've given the 1 point to Seri for just another, I think, another solid, busy display where he's getting to a point now where early in the season when I was watching it, it felt like he was a bit frantic, running around trying to do everything, and maybe he was a bit unfit or something. But he just seems to now he's getting to a point where he just seems to be just gliding around and just he just receives and he plays off, and it was just some really nice passes. Solid work in the middle, solid defensively. Couldn't really fault him. So
he's the sort of player that when he comes in for a contest to win the ball, I'm confident that 9 or even 10 times out of 10 he's going to come away with it because his ball retention going into a contest and coming out of it or winning the ball off the opposition is just amazing. And as you say, I don't know if it's also maybe more confidence in his teammates that he knows where they'll be when he needs to play a pass and things like that mean that he's a bit less frantic, like you were saying earlier in the season. whatever it is, maybe it's clarity of role under Rosenia versus. Oh, I can't remember if it was Elder or somebody made the comment about Shotta not really. Oh no, I think it was Christie might have even been saying that Shotta
I
didn't
think there was
really.
a couple of players that sort of came out, and that's what I was about to say. Perhaps it was that said that under Shotta, it wasn't really clear exactly what he expected of each player in their role and in their position. So would explain why lots of times in that early part of the season, Seri looked in two minds, because he probably was, because he's being told, or either given two sort of different instructions or given unclear instructions about what he should be doing in situations. But I think now we're seeing the player now that we thought we would, that we thought we signed. The
That's
beginning of the
it.
season,
Yeah.
I was like, what the heck?
Yeah. And look, I went the same too, in the same order as you for the other votes as well, because as you sort of said there, I mean, Ingram outstanding with the penalty save. I was a bit nervous. Obviously, I can't remember the last penalty save we've had, really, to be honest. I think it's been pretty rare. So to have Ingram keep that out, if anyone plays there's the championship fantasy game, Gaffer, where you can play this chip where you get the 10 points if your keeper makes a penalty save. And I traded out Ingram because he didn't have. There was Huddersfield and Blackpool had 2 games this week, so I was like, I'll get rid of Ingram and I'll bring in one of their keepers. And then I'm sitting there just being like, I can't believe he's going to save a penalty this week of all weeks. But that was a fantastic effort. And Christie as well. I don't know if you've seen the story that's gone around. It's kind of blown up a bit about Christie saying he was having a bit of a conversation with Robinson, saying he's going to miss it and do us a favour. Just sort of yelling to Tufan while Robinson's lining up, saying, yeah, he's going to miss it, and playing his part. And in all seriousness, you look at Connolly, you look at Christie, you look at those guys with that desire to win and that hunger to win, and you do need a bit of that mongrel in you to actually, win promotion from this division and actually have that desire. And, there's a bit of, softly with some of our former players potentially, where we've kind of just meekly turned up to teams and let them bully us. I think of like that Sheffield United game last season where I think Sharp scored one, and Egan maybe got a couple of goals over the top of Wilkes because Wilkes just got out muscled. And you've just got to have these characters in the team who really sort of take the game by the scruff of the neck and say, no, we're going to get us over the line here. And no, it's awesome to see.
You mentioned Connolly. Question, because it's popped up, and he sort of did an interview where he said like he's going to have a big decision to make in the summer. I mean, it's very early days, but are you one be looking who would be willing to make a call now on whether you would want him on a permanent?
I think for me there's 2 factors. Is one would be the level of fee required to get him out of Brighton, and I look at like Longman signing for us, and that was a pretty cheap fee. Obviously Connolly had a much brighter start and was in the first team at Brighton, so he'd probably have a bigger fee. I'd also just want to see it over a couple more games, and especially when we've got like Ebioe in this, even though Ebioe is just on loan, so he's not going to be there next year, but just to see how he links up with the other attacking players, because you wouldn't want to be sitting here in like 6 weeks and those 2 goals against QPR is only 2 goals, and yes, he's looking bright and busy but not really doing much, and you go, well, maybe it was a flash in the pan. But his performances have been awesome. And like I was saying before, in terms of like that competitor and hunger and everything, he's exactly what you want in that team. So I'd say yes at the moment, but I'll probably see where he's at in the next 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, I only asked because I was thinking about like Longman specifically. He came on, he was on loan, and he went really, really good, and we're like, oh wow, and then we signed him, and then he really seems to have just dropped off big time in his performances, and I was like,
that's it exactly.
Like I'm looking at the parallels between the two of them, and I was like, I wonder what other people think.
That's it exactly, because you can have these players on loan who just look amazing over the sort of 4 or 5 months, and you go, yeah, we've got to have them, and you pay over the odds for them, and then they come in on a permanent, and then you're like, oh, this isn't who I thought we were getting. So I trust Rosenia. Like I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Darlow, whether he gets a spot on the team. But other than that, I think all of the decisions Rosenia seems to have made so far in terms of signings, who he's let go, that sort of ruthlessness, I think he's made some really good decisions, and I think our business in the summer is going to be really interesting as a result. But like what I see so far from Connolly.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of the same as you. I think like it is really too early to tell or to make a clear decision, because he could go for the rest of the season and not score another goal. I probably don't really think that's the case. He looks like he
Yeah.
is someone who's in and around. He almost had that tap in against Cardiff, where I think it bounced back off a post off Slater's shot and stuff. But there's a part of me that's going, if we sign him, is he going to do a Longman? Is he just going to like drop
Yeah.
off completely? But I
I
think
think I think the difference I'd say is he's obviously shown he can do it at Premier League level. So I
Mm.
think it's more a case of, he's almost like one of those sorts of players where he's had that dip in confidence and dip in form. He needs to go somewhere he's loved and turn it around, and sort of like a Tufan, really. It's the same sort of player where it's like you probably wouldn't get them if they were playing to their level, but because they're below their level, then they sort of are more available for clubs willing to
Yeah.
take that risk.
But yeah, you mentioned the summer, and I sort of think it will be interesting, because I think like obviously we've got a few on loan, but the squad overall is pretty solid. And if you retain most of what we've got, you're probably only looking at adding, 2 or 3. I guess we've got lots of players to re-sign, lots of off-contract players. I think we've got quite a few, but it doesn't actually look. Hopefully, it's not. We're not going on a big overhaul again, like we did in the previous summer. But
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you look at the form table and where we are, and it sort of goes on to, we can talk briefly. We already sort of did at the start of the episode in terms of playoff potential, but you look at the form table since Rosenior came in, I think we're 6th in that. So you sort of project that over a full season. That's us in the playoffs, just on, granted we haven't played everyone yet, but it's getting to a decent sample size. I think it's 12 or 13 games now. Do you think having everyone fit for a preseason, adding a couple of players for a bit of depth where needed, and yeah, you're right, like Elder, and there's probably a few others I think as well out of contract in the summer, Jones maybe as well, not sure, where you'd say, yeah, you probably re-sign a couple or you add a few players as depth, but you don't necessarily need that overhaul to see a huge improvement in terms of league position. When you think you give Rosenior a full season, you should see that natural improvement.
Yeah, I think I reckon there's probably maybe 1 or 2 changes in the back where I think Figueiredo has not really worked, and he's just riding the pine because he's a senior body, really. I think he's one who probably should move on and find someone else. And then I guess the decision becomes on what Jones, if he does, if he goes or if he stays, then there's, obviously potentially there's a decision there. But I think Doherty is one who's out of contract as well.
Yeah. I love Doherty, but he is probably one where you think you're making that harsh call on what do we need for a Premier League squad, and he probably doesn't make the cut.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I really like him, but I think he might be one who potentially does. I guess it really depends where we end up. I think if we finish, playoffs, and we're going, what, next year, like we'll be there or whatever, then he probably maybe doesn't get a thing. But I think if we sort of fell off a little bit, he'd be one that I'd probably be happy to have in the squad again next season, depending on whether if he had like a 12-month extension or something. I'd be like, just activate it and then
see what the next year looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's one where I'm like, I would have had him in the same group as like Honeyman and stuff, where last summer I would have kept those guys. You ditch your your Magennis, your Eves, your Smallwood probably as well, and like that sort of those more depth players. Your Honeymans and your Dohertys would start to transition to your depth for this current season, and then you'd probably move them on the following year. So that's why I'd be like, maybe Doherty does go this summer.
Possibly, but yeah, I guess we will. I'm sure, we'll see all of that. Find that all out in due course.
That's it. We've only just come out of the January window, but yeah, it's always transfer business on the horizon. But look, we'll move on then. We do have those 2 games to preview, so we'll do our game of Who Am I first, and then we'll chat Stoke and Norwich if you're good to go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So I made 141 appearances for City, and I scored 0 goals.
Right. 141 and 0. What's that? 141. So that's like
I'm gonna find a. I'm
three
gonna
and a
find a.
half, something like that.
Yeah,
Seasons.
I'm gonna
But
find like
without injury.
yeah, I'm gonna find like an outfield player who scored 0 goals and just have you convinced it's a goalkeeper until final clue. I haven't on this occasion. It is a goalkeeper.
Yeah, right. So who? Marshall?
Oh, it's a very good guess, but it's not Marshall. I joined City in 2013, departed in 2018 after a brief loan spell at Cardiff in 2017. So 2013 was, I think, our first Premier League season under Bruce. And then 2018, I feel like that was Adkins, but that feels too recent for this guy. Might be right.
So I'm like 20. I see like 2013, and I'm like, okay, that's like McGregor years. But then like, did we loan him out, or did he just leave? But then I'm going, who was the other? Because we had. I mean, I'll just say McGregor because it's all I can think of. But I don't.
It's McGregor.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I completely forgot he went on loan at Cardiff.
he?
That's what when you said Marshall, I was like, oh, it's his Scottish teammate. But yeah, went on loan. I was actually just surprised he was there until 2018. I thought he would have been because what's 2018's like after that silver Premier League season, isn't it? Was he out injured that whole year? I'll look that up now because that intrigues me. I know he definitely got back to the championship with us.
Yeah.
But I didn't think he.
Yeah, I didn't even know he'd got. I don't remember that he went on loan. I thought he just like went back to Scotland or something. But
yeah, there you go. So 16-17, which is our Premier League season, our like Phelan and Silva, he had a back injury. So then Jakubovic and Marshall were the two keepers, and he was loaned to Cardiff in January of that year to get fitness. And then he played for us again the following year. Yeah, so they must have played for us in 17-18 and then left after the summer. There you go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, David Marshall. Alan McGregor. There you go. Not David Marshall.
So I was like, yeah, right. I was pretty close.
Yeah. No, good shout. Cool. Okay. Well, like I said, I'll try and find a defender or someone that scored 0 goals after like 100 games and chuck them in there as a curveball. But anyway, Stoke. Speaking of former City players, we used to have quite a lot of them at Stoke, and I was looking at their squad. Obviously, Chester's left to Derby. Ince is left to Reading. Tymon's out injured for this game. I think it might just be Powell who'll potentially be playing in this one. I don't actually know if he's been playing lately for them. But they're in pretty poor form at the moment. They're a bit of a bogey team for us. I think they always seem to knock us off. I think it's 1 win and 11 at their place. But 4 losses in 5 for them, really sort of on the brink of the relegation zone, really. As I sort of alluded to at the start of the episode, this is one of those games you look at and say, it's a big game because we just need to be taking the 3 points.
Yeah, I think I look at the 2 games coming up and like I sort of we got off that. I think we're like 4 points behind Norwich or something. But ideally you'd go, we want the 6 points because then we overtake them and we sort of get But I think like 4 points from the 2 games would be a pretty good result. I think sort of as you say, like I think because they're struggling, lost some players, transfer business and such. I think I think this is a very winnable game, and I think 2 really strong performances, 2 clean sheets. I think we should feel. I mean, I feel fairly confident that we should be going and picking up the points against Stoke.
And I think the fact that it's an away game does play into our hands. I mean, as I sort of said about Cardiff, the fact that we struggle against sides that sit back, I think the fact that it's at Stoke and the form that they're in, I don't think they can afford to just, look, maybe they will just play for a draw against us, but you'd expect them to at least have a go at it. And in a way that should actually help us.
Mm. I guess, yeah, I think, I don't know, just, I don't know. I just feel real confident in what we've got. There's just, I feel like we're starting to get the balance right in the attacking third. I think Connolly's added a lot, um, and obviously not back for Stoke, but we've got lots of players that are coming back into contention for the Norwich game, um, which
Also,
I think for Stoke, I'd say go unchanged, even though, and that's considering Greaves being fully fit. I honestly just like, I mean, you sort of, if it ain't broke, why fix it? I
mm.
think like, that would be my suggestion. I think that he probably will bring Greaves back in, but I would suggest that we just leave it the same.
Yeah, I do feel like I could see Elder dropping out, and I think it'd be harsh. I think people would be sort of focused on that penalty incident and think, yeah, that's fair enough. I think the rest of his game was actually decent, but I think it's just one of those ones. I mean, on Elder, I did notice the other day he's creeping up in the appearances for City. I think he's only 2 appearances behind Garcia now, which in the sense that if he plays even off the bench 2 more games,
Mm.
he'll become our most capped Australian, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So I have
right.
to keep an eye out for that. But look, I mean, we've got Ebioe, who supposedly will be fit for the bench for this one. Pelkas potentially fit for the bench for this one as well. So you sort of go from a position of not really having much attacking talent in our depth to potentially either for this game or, as you say, for definitely for Norwich, having a lot more at our disposal.
Yeah, so I think I'd be looking to go unchanged for Stoke, which then potentially means, again, short turnaround, but all of those other players returning to the fold, Tede from suspension and such, that potentially there'll be some change against Norwich, which I think would probably be someone like Tufan dropping out and like Tete coming in or something like that. But yeah, I mean, also it could, on a sort of bit of a side note, segue, that Traore got, played his
Yeah.
first minutes for the under 21s. Apparently, almost scored a banger of a free kick. I haven't seen
Oh,
it,
really?
but yeah, he said I think he hit the post and then they tapped it in, but it was he was off. The other player was off. Our player was offside or something off the free kick. So um, yeah, so I think there's another one who obviously he's probably still a few weeks away after such a long-term injury, but good to see him. Obviously, he's playing. He's obviously been training. He's played with the under 21s. I reckon a couple more of those games, and then he probably starts making the bench.
Yeah, that's another exciting one. I'd actually forgotten that he was injured at his previous club too. So it's actually over 12 months since he last
Yeah,
played.
right.
So
Wow.
um, I think there's another under 21s game on Monday night or something, which he's sort of penciled in for. And yeah, you sort of think, I think he played 45 minutes in this one, maybe tries to creep up to 60 minutes or
Mm.
something and starts getting a couple of 90s under his belt. And then, yeah, hopefully on the bench for the seniors would be great to see. You're sort of talking Norwich there as well. May as well talk about that game as well in conjunction. But they're a like they've been in. They won 2 of the 3 games under Farker, scoring I think 8 goals in the process. Back to earth against Burnley with a 3-0 loss, I think it was. But otherwise, looking much
Mm.
improved under Farker compared to under Smith. Um, that's probably our biggest game of the season so far. I
Mm.
think I'd say the one it reminds me of is that Aston Villa game back under Adkins when we were like right on the cusp of the playoffs. I think we went up 2-0 in the first half and then we drew 2-2 and our playoff push kind of fell apart after
Mm.
that. This is sort of like not quite the same because that would have put us in the playoff places, I think. But this one, it's like it's a real test of our credentials. Where I think
Mm.
if we come away with 3 points from this, you start to go, okay, like this is real. We are in that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's sort of it's not quite a turning point, but I think that sense of like confidence in the ability to actually make that push and compete against the bigger teams in the division is really I think what we're going to see out of that game and out of that result. Whether we can actually, because I think to make that playoff push, we really need to be stringing quite a these patches of wins and like at least points like together consistently. We can't afford to have too many losses in this remaining 16, which is a big ask. It's a lot of games to go, saying, you can maybe afford 2 or 3 losses if you want to be seriously pushing, for that top 6. But I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be, I think that will be a really good game. I'm really looking forward to that. I think, two teams that will play some decent football. I think it'll sort of they'll be looking at us going, we'll do this, and we'll they'll be the same as what we're looking at other teams. They'll be looking at us going, we do this, we open up a keep that 4 point, open up a 7 point, whatever gap above the team, teams below us, and they'll be pretty confident that they can come and probably score some goals. But I think I think we should be able to hopefully expose some space, from a team that is going to play football. We know about it, yeah.
So you sort of, you probably expect a 3 points against Stoke. I'd want to be optimistic and say I think we'll beat Norwich. I think it could be a draw. I think that would still be a positive result. I think, like a 1-1 draw or something like that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I just don't want us to lose like 2-3-0 sort of thing and sort of feel like we're back to square one.
Yeah, I think that's what I sort of said. 4 points. I expect at least 4. 6 would be sensational, but I think I think it's sort of got to be, we have to pick up points, and I think we have to get at least a win out of the 2 as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, look, it's going to be an exciting week. We've got that Norwich game Wednesday morning, so good time over here in Australia, 6:45 in the morning, which will be great. Stoke game as well, big game. As you say, we definitely need at least a win out of these 2 games, but hopefully we'll be picking up the 6 points and back here to talk about it next week. But until then, thanks for joining me, Dan.
No worries, anytime.
And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back this time next week. But until then, come on, City.